New York City, America's accountant, Dan Geltrude. Dan, it's great to see you. So, Dan, I'm sure you had a chance to look at the numbers. What's your reaction?
Well, the numbers may very well be accurate, Stephanie, but one of the things I do not agree with what President Biden said is that these jobs were created. The jobs were not created. These are jobs that are recovered. So, yes, we are having more jobs in record numbers, but these were jobs that already had existed. So we are really in a position to simply try to get back to where we were. Now, look, it's nobody's fault, at least in the United States, I think, that we had COVID. So it happened. And now how do we recover from that? Certainly, putting more people back to work is the pathway to getting where we need to be.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of us were expecting a little more doom and gloom because of Omicron, but then it turned out that Omicron wasn't as bad as Delta or the original COVID-19. That being said, people continued to go to work. And if you look at the CDC guidance on people returning to work, that was cut. That was reduced down to 5 days. So I'm sure all of those impacted these numbers as well.
Yeah, they did. Look, I think it's all positive news that we are learning to live with COVID and its variants. I mean, we can't stay locked up forever. Eventually, we have to realize that we have to all get back to work, understand that the virus exists, hopefully in a much less deadly form, and that we have some type of return to normalcy. And that's what this is all about. And that's why there's a lot of pushback related to mandates for masks and vaccines being in place. Is it really necessary anymore? And most of all, Steph, I keep going back to, if we don't get people back to work, our country could never be the same as it was.
Yeah, so true. And due to inflation, which is no surprise, it's driving workers to want higher pay. How does that impact the workforce in our economy when we see employers having to artificially raise wages? That is because that's where we are right now. Will that have an impact later? Because I know that sometimes when employers have to raise their wages, they end up cutting employees and so on.
That's exactly what happens. Look, we still have over 10 million job openings in this country. So, of course, that puts employees in a very good position to have higher wages. Okay, great. Here's the problem. If employers have to pay more in order to get the workers, they're not going to just absorb that cost. That's the formula for going out of business. So those costs need to be passed along. And what does that mean? More inflation. So everything becomes more expensive. So people who are making more money, and if you look at that just in a silo, you could say, well, that's great. People are making more money. But if inflation is rising at a higher percentage than those wages, then you're actually going backwards. And that's what we're seeing right now. So on one hand, good news. Other hand, not so good.
Definitely. And also, too, if they're slashing employees to pay higher salaries, then some of those employees are going to experience serious burnout. And you hear a lot of stories about that as well. Now I want to shift gears here. I thought this was interesting. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is backing the possible union for Capitol Hill staff. And this is coming up as we're hearing a lot of horror stories of those who are working on Capitol Hill saying that they feel underpaid and overworked. Thoughts about this?
You know, I've always heard that about congressional interns, is that they work a crazy amount of hours and they don't get paid very much, and some don't get paid at all. Why? Well, because it's for the honor of being able to deal with all these wonderful people in Congress. You know what? I don't think so. They probably do deserve to be paid a lot more. And what's really disturbing is this is happening right under the noses of all the people in Congress. This was no secret. Everyone knew this was going on. So somehow now this starts to grab some attention. And what happens? All the people in Congress are saying, this is outrageous. They need to be paid more. They need to have a union. We should have never gotten to this point. The lawmakers are right there. Do something about it before we hit this point.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram there's a page dedicated to the experiences that some of these Capitol Hill workers have, and it's nonpartisan. It's people from both sides, and they're just reporting on some of the things that they go through day-to-day basis. And also, they had a list of the members of Congress and some of the senators and who had the revolving door, that is, the most people resigning and leaving their offices, which they were suggesting says a lot about that member of Congress. So I thought that was pretty hilarious. So what are the chances of this actually going through?
They're probably pretty good due to the fact that it has a congressional backing. So obviously, Congress is saying, look, we want to pay more to our interns. Now, I don't know why we have to go through a whole process of having them form a union. Just pay them more. It seems like it's a simple solution. But I guess in Washington, nothing is a simple solution.
Yeah, well, and if we pay more, so that's more taxpayer dollars, by the way. So I'm wondering how big those salaries would be. So yeah, I could see maybe Congress being for that because it's not necessarily their own money. Well, Dan, we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steph.
Of course. Coming up.